You ever notice something? Gen Z gets criticized from almost every direction. They're called lazy, chronically online, unable to focus, too sensitive, the TikTok generation. But almost nobody asks the question that actually matters. What kind of world creates a generation like this? Because Gen Z, born roughly between 1997 and 2012, didn't simply grow up with technology. They grew up inside uncertainty, and that uncertainty quietly shaped how they see themselves, other people, success, relationships, and even reality itself. Imagine you're 10 years old. You've never known a world without the internet. A smartphone isn't an invention, it's just life. If you have a question, you don't wonder, you search. If you're bored, entertainment arrives instantly. If something happens, someone is already recording it. The internet isn't a place you visit, it's the environment you grow up in. But while technology was becoming more powerful, the world was becoming less predictable. Many Gen Z kids watched their parents deal with the aftermath of the Great Recession. School lockdown drills became normal. Political conflict filled the news almost every day. Climate change shifted from a distant concern to a personal one. Then, during some of the most important years of social development, the entire world shut down. For millions of teenagers, high school wasn't just interrupted, it was replaced by isolation. Psychologists know that adolescence is the period when humans develop identity through other people, friendships, first relationships, embarrassing moments, learning where you belong. COVID suddenly removed many of those experiences. Instead of discovering themselves in classrooms, many Gen Z teenagers were discovering themselves through screens, and that changes people. There's another psychological force that often gets overlooked. Previous generations compared themselves to classmates, neighbors, coworkers. Gen Z compares themselves to the entire planet, every day. Open Instagram, someone is richer. Open TikTok, someone is funnier. Open YouTube, someone your age already built $1 million business. The human brain was never designed to compete with billions of people at once. Psychologists call this upward social comparison. The more exceptional people you constantly see, the more average your own life begins to feel, even when you're doing perfectly fine. That's one reason Gen Z often seems obsessed with self-improvement. Morning routines, cold plunges, high-protein diets, supplements, productivity apps, side hustles, personal branding. It isn't always vanity. Sometimes it's survival, because when you're constantly exposed to extraordinary people, being ordinary starts to feel like failure. Then there's attention. People often say Gen Z has a short attention span, but that's only part of the story. Think about what their brains adapted to. Thousands of notifications, infinite scrolling, algorithms competing for every second of attention. Every app is designed to answer one question. How do we make someone stay just a little longer? After years of this environment, long periods of uninterrupted focus become genuinely difficult. Not because Gen Z lacks discipline, but because their attention has been trained by systems built to capture it. Their relationship with work is different too. Older generations often viewed a career as stability. Gen Z watched companies lay people off over video calls. They saw influencers earning more than executives. They watched artificial intelligence begin replacing work that once seemed untouchable. So many of them don't dream about climbing one corporate ladder. They dream about flexibility, remote work, multiple income streams, owning something instead of depending on something. To some people, that looks like commitment issues. To Gen Z, it feels like common sense. Relationships have changed as well. Dating has become more connected than ever, and somehow more confusing. A conversation can last for weeks without becoming a relationship. Someone can watch every story you post while never sending a message. You can know hundreds of people and still feel profoundly lonely. Technology increased communication. It didn't always increase connection. Researchers have found that loneliness can exist even when people interact constantly online, because the number of interactions matters less than the depth of them. That's one reason many Gen Z adults describe feeling surrounded, yet disconnected. Mental health is another place where people often misunderstand this generation. Critics say Gen Z talks too much about anxiety, too much about burnout, too much about therapy. But consider what they grew up seeing. Information about trauma became widely available. Mental health conversations moved into schools. Social media encouraged people to share personal struggles publicly. Instead of hiding emotional pain, Gen Z learned to name it. Whether that's progress or oversharing depends on who you ask. But psychologically, it represents a generation trying to understand emotions rather than simply suppress them. Then there's identity. For previous generations, identity developed slowly. Your hometown, your family, your school, your friends. Gen Z developed identity while receiving constant feedback from the internet. Likes, comments, views, followers. For the first time in history, algorithms became part of adolescence. Every post quietly asks a question. Did people approve of this version of me? When approval becomes measurable, identity can start feeling measurable too. And perhaps that's why authenticity has become so valuable to Gen Z. Not because authenticity is trendy, but because performing for an audience is exhausting. After years of carefully curating images, many young people simply want permission to be real. Maybe the biggest misunderstanding about Gen Z is that people mistake caution for weakness. They aren't entering adulthood during decades of steady optimism. They're entering adulthood while hearing about inflation, housing costs, artificial intelligence, global conflicts, and environmental uncertainty. Every major decision feels heavier. Every plan feels temporary. Yet despite all of that, they're still building businesses, learning new skills, creating communities, questioning old assumptions, and adapting faster than almost any generation before them. The truth is, Gen Z wasn't raised in a stable world. They were raised in a world that changed faster than anyone could explain it. So they became flexible, curious, skeptical, digitally fluent, and emotionally aware. Not because those traits were fashionable, but because those traits helped them survive the environment they inherited. Maybe that's the hidden psychology of Gen Z, not laziness, not fragility, not addiction to technology, but adaptation to a world that never stopped changing. If this video helped you understand Gen Z a little differently, consider subscribing. And if you'd like to support more deep dives into the hidden psychology behind the generations, habits, and behaviors that shape all of us, becoming a channel member is one of the best ways to help. I'd genuinely appreciate it.